when the pathologist takes the specimen, it's put on a specimen tray, and right away is identified, and a still picture is made, yet in color.
There's a lot of questions about, does the military do things the same way every time?
Kvyat produced the Alien Autopsy TV show and says the purported autopsy cameraman claims procedure went out the window.
That there's nothing that's standard operating procedure when it comes to events that are this important.
National forensic expert, San Francisco medical examiner Dr. Boyd Stevens, says the medical technique of the people in the film seems odd.
Typically in an autopsy, when we take organs out, we will measure them, weigh them, and then they will be cut. Now, you never see them weigh it, you never see them measure it, you never see them do any of the things that are common in an autopsy. For the autopsy of the century, it's pretty poor camera work. I can't even tell you anything about the organs. Having watched this movie multiple times, I have no idea what organs are in there or what position they're in.
Dr. Stevens says the body does not appear human.
We can see some pretty abnormal development. The eyes are very, very non-human. That's not coming up like typical skin. It's very stiff.
Stiff, like rubber?
Well, that's a rubber guy.
That's a rubber guy.
Movie special effects experts say the proof is in the details. Phil Tippett created the Oscar-winning Aliens in Star Wars. In fact, that's Tippett himself on Woodwinds. He says, look at the autopsy cuts.
When an incision is made in a conventional organism, the wound tends to open up. And here it's very much like what you would expect from rubber.
Not all experts agree. Stan Winston, who worked on Jurassic Park, appeared in the Alien Autopsy TV show saying this would be hard to fake. But Jurassic Park colleague Trey Stokes says the autopsy alien just looks phony.
Here we go, here's the key thing.
Why is the jaw not moving?
Why is the jaw not moving? Why not even rotate the head slightly?
Because moving it too much, Stokes says, would give it away. For example, watch the alien head. It seems to jiggle when the brain's removed.
Now watch the hand, don't watch the brain. Watch the hand. There's a thumb. Oh, you have to look real close. But this thing, when she takes her hand off, it goes, and she grabs it again.
How about the background, the clock, the phone cord? We've checked, and all actually existed in 1947. But Dr. Stevens found an interesting clue, technique and instruments that appear European.
This handsaw he's using is a type that has teeth that comes around this blunt or rounded end. But the one that we most commonly see in the United States doesn't have teeth come all the way around the front of the saw.
The owner of the so-called alien autopsy turns out to be a European film collector.
This is the only piece of physical evidence in this case, a scant 4 frames, purportedly from the alien autopsy film.
The ripped fragment appears to be 1947 Kodak film, but it shows only stairs that are not in the autopsy. The TV show producer says he got it from the European collector, Ray Santilli.
This piece of film does not prove really anything, although it does show that Ray was able to get old film.
If the film is bogus, what about the Roswell UFO? Channel 2 has uncovered new information, never before broadcast, about that 1947 incident. Next week, you can decide for yourself, hoax, mistake, or close encounter. I'm John Fowler, and that's segment 2 for tonight. The New Mexico desert seen from space, one of the world's hotspots for reported UFOs. White Sands Missile Range, there in the lower middle of the screen. The town of Roswell on the left, about halfway to the horizon. Something strange did happen here near Roswell in July 1947. Witnesses say they saw a UFO. The Army announced it had found a flying saucer. Locals claim they saw alien bodies, and official stories have been changed. These pictures, recently broadcast around the world, purport to be an autopsy of an extraterrestrial killed at Roswell. But an avalanche of inconsistencies suggests this so-called alien is a hoax. So what about claims of aliens from Roswell itself?
There was a witness, a civilian, who was here on Roswell Air Base at the infirmary just after, he says, rescue crews brought the alien bodies here.
I knew something happened, but I didn't know what it was.
71-year-old Glenn Dennis claims he learned these details of supposed alien bodies from a nurse at the Roswell Air Base back in '47. At the time, Dennis worked at the Ballard Funeral Home a couple of miles from the base. He says his part in the Roswell incident began with a strange phone call.
A guy called from the air base and said he was a mortuary officer, and he wanted to know if we had 3-foot, 4-foot hermetically sealed baby caskets. If so, how many?
He says later that same day at the base infirmary he saw shiny debris with strange hieroglyphics, and then the nurse, followed by 2 men.
They all 3 had towels over their face and they were gasping and coughing. And she saw me and she screamed, "Hey Glenn, get out, you're going to get in a lot of trouble."
He says the nurse, who he refused to identify, later described bodies like this one, alien bodies.
It's pretty much what the nurse said. You know, they were like 3.5, 4 feet, a large head. Heads were pliable like a newborn child. The 4 fingers and everything. This pretty much represents it.
I would be very surprised if it ended up that he had concocted this story. However, unfortunately, Glenn's story is not corroborated by other witnesses.
Researcher and airline pilot Kent Jeffrey is trying to answer half-century-old questions about the Roswell incident. But he's up against dimming memories, long-dead witnesses, and a total lack of physical evidence. In 1947, Roswell Airfield was home to the B-29s of the 509th Bomb Group, then the world's only nuclear-armed combat unit. This man, Major Jesse Marcel, now deceased, was the unit's intelligence officer, and this dramatic crash disc headline came from his eyewitness report. He later said he showed saucer debris to his family hours after he found it. Marcel's son, today a doctor and reserve military pilot, recalls what he saw.
A burnished or a slate gray type of aluminum metal. There was black plastic type debris like bakelite, which was shattered. It was very brittle material. And then there were fragments of what appeared to be I-beams.
This model of an I-beam with curious writing on it is based on the younger Marcel's recollection. A local rancher also claimed to have seen otherworldly debris. But the military quickly changed its saucer story, saying it was a common weather balloon and its foil radar reflector. That's Major Marcel posing with the material. Years later, Marcel would tell a reporter he was coerced into a cover-up. Channel 2 has obtained Major Marcel's military records, which seem to show the intelligence officer was prone to exaggeration and fabrication, at least in the reporter's interview. When the Major made his cover-up claims in 1978, he also said he was a pilot with several thousand hours flight time. Records show he was in fact a map maker, an occasional passenger on combat missions. He claimed to have shot down 5 enemy planes, receiving medals for that combat action. There's no record of that. He also claimed to have a degree in nuclear physics, but had just 1 year of college. Interestingly, on June 30th, 1947, Marcel's performance evaluation included for the first time in his career that he was, quote, lacking in imagination and initiative. 7 days later, his crash disk report made world headlines. But to this day, unexplained inconsistencies, durable belief in conspiracies, and reports of strange happenings in the desert around Roswell keep this case alive.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and we don't have that yet, either way.
Next time, the best evidence on what really happened, both at Roswell and in the making of this film. That's next Friday. I'm John Fowler, and that's segment 2 for tonight. Outside Roswell, New Mexico, you can pay $15 to see the supposed UFO crash site. 2 UFO museums in town draw 250,000 people a year to learn of the strange events of July 1947. The official military news release, the napkin drawings of alien bodies, and models of creatures that supposedly fell out of a crashed saucer. Over at the old air base, there's the hangar, where some say the military stored a flying saucer and alien bodies. Witnesses tell us the Army did keep something here under secrecy unusual even for this high-security base. In July 1947, this base was home to the 509th Bomb Group, the world's only atomic bomb squadron. It had just 2 years earlier dropped the 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Not far from Roswell, the military was launching secret rockets, and a rash of UFO sightings had prompted fears of Russian spy planes. The military was also testing high-altitude balloons. This one, codenamed Project Mogul, was a top-secret spy craft to find out if the Russians were doing atomic bomb tests. At the time, that was America's #1 intelligence objective. Newly declassified documents show several Mogul balloons crashed in the New Mexico desert. Roswell intelligence officer Major Jesse Marcel reported seeing UFO wreckage, but the military now says it was nothing more than Project Mogul debris. Researcher Kent Jeffrey says the Mogul explanation does not fit.
The purpose of it was secret. However, the hardware used was not secret. The hardware used was nothing other than common weather balloons and radar reflectors and some listening instruments. So, again, there would be no reason for a massive cover-up of any kind just because of Project Mogul.
But remember, this was before the U.S. knew the Russians had the bomb, and the Red Scare was mushrooming.